The morning shift at Galactic Security Station Alpha 7 started like any other. Commander Welsh moved through the customs gate area with practiced efficiency, his multiple eyes scanning the crowds of travelers from dozens of worlds. His insectoid body clicked softly as he walked, mandibles twitching as he reviewed the daily briefing on his datapad. 300 ships expected today, mostly routine traffic. Nothing unusual. The security scanners beeped their normal rhythm as passengers passed through. A family of gentlefolk, their fur rippling nervously as always. A merchant from the Crystal Collective, her translucent body shimmering under the lights. A group of young Mershanti students, their breathing apparatus humming softly. All peaceful species, all approved for travel within Coalition space. Then the scanner screamed. Welsh's head snapped up so fast his neck plates rattled. Red lights flashed across every monitor. The security system had detected something it classified as a Class A threat. Apex predator signatures. Multiple warnings scrolled across the screens. Retractable claws. Carnivorous dental structure. Binocular vision. Enhanced night vision capability. Fast twitch muscle fibers optimized for striking. All units to Gate 7, Welsh commanded into his communicator. His voice remained calm despite the adrenaline analog flooding his system. Possible hostile. Weapons ready but do not fire unless threatened. Security personnel materialized from every direction. The Krixtar guards like himself. Towering stone warriors from Granite Prime. Even the usually peaceful Skyborn deployed their containment fields. Other travelers scrambled away from Gate 7, some screaming, others frozen in terror. Parents grabbed their children. Shop owners activated their security shutters. Through the gate walked a human woman. Welsh had read the briefings about humans, the new species making first contact with the Coalition. They claimed to be peaceful despite their obvious predatory biology. Forward-facing eyes, omnivorous teeth, persistence hunter physiology. The Coalition Council was still debating whether to grant them even provisional membership, but the woman walking through the scanner looked utterly calm. She wore simple clothing in blues and grays, carried a standard diplomatic bag, and had her identification papers ready. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical style. She appeared to be in her mid-30s by human standards, with warm brown skin and an easy smile. On her shoulder sat the source of the alarms. The creature was small, perhaps the size of Welsh's thorax. It had golden brown fur with darker spots and stripes, massive eyes that reflected the station lights, and delicate triangular ears that swiveled independently toward sounds. As Welsh watched in horror, the creature yawned, revealing sharp white fangs and a pink tongue. "Halt!" Welsh commanded, his voice amplified through the station speakers. 40 weapons trained on the woman and her creature. "Identify yourself and the predator you are transporting." The woman stopped but did not look alarmed. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, xenobiologist with the Earth Diplomatic Corps. This is Artemis. She's a cat, specifically a Bengal kitten. My papers are all in order, Commander." "Your papers say nothing about transporting a live predator through civilian space," Welsh said. His translator struggled with the word cat, finding no equivalent in any Coalition language. "Our scanners classify this creature as extremely dangerous." "Artemis?" Dr. Chen looked up at the creature on her shoulder. The cat blinked slowly at her, then began to purr, a strange rumbling sound that made several nearby species gasp in fear. "Are they dangerous?" Welsh demanded. Dr. Chen smiled, and somehow that made her predatory features more obvious. Humans had such strange facial expressions. Only if you're a mouse, a bird, or my couch cushions. Confused murmur rippled through the security team. Welsh consulted his translator again. The words made no sense. "Explain immediately, or both you and the creature will be placed in quarantine." "Of course, Commander. I'm here for the Interspecies Cooperation Summit as part of Earth's application for Coalition membership. Artemis is my pet, my companion animal. She comes with me everywhere." "Pet?" Another untranslatable concept. Welsh felt his confusion growing into frustration. "You keep a predator as a possession?" "Not a possession exactly. More like a family member." Dr. Chen reached up and gently scratched behind the cat's ears. The creature's eyes closed in apparent pleasure, the purring growing louder. "Humans have lived alongside cats for nearly 10,000 years. We domesticated them. They're not dangerous to people." The crowd around them had grown larger. Species from across the Coalition pressed forward to see the strange human and her even stranger companion. A gentle folk mother clutched her child, his large eyes wide with terror. "It's going to eat us." Someone shouted from the back. "Artemis has never eaten anyone," Dr. Chen said patiently. "She eats specially prepared food. Fish-based protein, usually. Sometimes chicken, fish." "Chicken?" A translator's nightmare. Welsh switched to a different approach. "Dr. Chen, the Coalition has very clear protocols regarding predator species. They are either wild, in which case they must remain on their homeworlds, or they are sentient, in which case they must undergo extensive psychological evaluation before being allowed in civilian areas. Your creature appears to be neither. That's because Earth has a third category: domesticated animals, species that evolved alongside humans in a partnership. We changed them, and they changed us." Welsh studied the small predator more carefully. It did seem remarkably calm for an apex hunter. It made no move to attack, showed no signs of aggression. In fact, as he watched, the creature appeared to lose interest in the entire situation. It began grooming itself, licking one small paw and using it to wash behind its ears. "Partnership?" Welsh asked. "Between predator and prey?" "Well, humans aren't exactly prey," Dr. Chen pointed out. "We're also predators. Persistence hunters with excellent endurance and tool-making abilities. Cats are ambush predators with speed and stealth. We complemented each other. They helped us control rodents that ate our food stores. We gave them shelter and safety. This was too much." Welsh signaled to his second-in-command. "Dr. Chen, I must ask you to accompany us to a secure area while we verify your credentials and consult with the Coalition Council. The creature must be contained." "Her name is Artemis," Dr. Chen said, a slight edge entering her voice for the first time. "And she's not dangerous. Look." Before Welsh could stop her, a gentle folk child broke free from his mother's grasp. The small creature, barely knee-high to the humans, had dropped his toy and it had rolled toward the security checkpoint. The child ran after it, directly toward Dr. Chen and the predator on her shoulder. Time seemed to slow. The mother screamed. Security personnel raised their weapons but couldn't fire into the crowd. Welsh lunged forward but knew he was too far away. The cat jumped from Dr. Chen's shoulder in one fluid motion. It landed directly in front of the gentle folk child. The station held its breath. Artemis sniffed the toy, a small stuffed representation of some earth animal. Then with one paw she gently patted it. The toy rolled back toward the child. The cat sat down, wrapped her tail around her legs, and looked up at the child with those enormous eyes. The child giggled. Actually giggled. He picked up his toy and reached out one small hand toward the cat. Artemis leaned forward and bumped her head against the child's palm. "You see, Commander?" Dr. Chen said quietly. "Humans learned something important over our evolution. We learned to redirect predator instincts, to channel hunting behavior into play, to transform killing techniques into social bonding. We call it civilization." Welsh slowly lowered his weapon. Around him, other security personnel did the same. The mother rushed forward and scooped up her child, but she was staring at the cat with wonder rather than fear. "This changes nothing," Welsh said. But his voice lacked conviction. "The protocols exist for good reason." "Then maybe it's time to write new protocols," Dr. Chen replied. "Because if you ban Artemis, you'll have to ban every human. We all carry the same predatory legacy. We just choose what we do with it." She picked up the cat and placed her back on her shoulder. Artemis settled in, purring contentedly, and together they waited for Welsh's decision. 3 days had passed since the incident at the security gate, and Dr. Sarah Chen had become the most controversial figure at the Interspecies Cooperation Summit. Half the delegates found her fascinating, approaching her during breaks to ask questions about Earth and its strange customs. The other half refused to share an elevator with her, convinced she was a walking threat to civilized society. The Crystal Towers Convention Center rose above the station's main plaza like a monument to coalition unity. Inside its massive conference halls, representatives from 47 different species gathered to discuss the future of galactic cooperation. And somewhere in those discussions, buried in the agenda between trade agreements and territorial disputes, was the question of humanity's membership. Sarah sat in the human delegation's assigned seats, taking notes on her datapad while a Mershanti economist droned on about shipping lane regulations. The seat beside her was occupied by Captain Marcus Webb, her official security detail. The man was built like the soldiers he used to serve with, though he'd traded his uniform for diplomatic dress. His hand rested near his sidearm. and his eyes constantly scanned the room. "You're making people nervous again," Marcus whispered. "I'm just sitting here," Sarah whispered back. "You're breathing. That makes them nervous." He wasn't entirely wrong. Sarah had noticed how other delegates positioned themselves. The herbivorous species kept at least 3 rows between themselves and the human section. Even some of the omnivores seemed uncomfortable. Only a few species showed genuine curiosity, and they were the ones currently being lectured by their more conservative colleagues. The real problem waited in Sarah's bag beneath her seat. Artemis was supposed to be confined to Sarah's quarters, but Sarah had smuggled the kitten into the conference center that morning. She'd tried to leave Artemis behind, truly she had, but the cat had given her that particular look, the one that communicated both betrayal and disappointment, and Sarah's resolve had crumbled. Now Artemis dozed in the specially modified bag with air holes, occasionally shifting position. Sarah prayed the kitten would stay quiet through the morning session. Her prayers went unanswered. The Mershanti economist finished his presentation, and Ambassador Threen of the Skyborn Collective took the floor. The avian diplomat's feathers were displayed in their most formal arrangement, and his voice carried the weight of authority as he activated the central holographic display. "Distinguished colleagues," Threen began, "we gather today to address a matter of grave importance: the application of humanity for coalition membership." Sarah sat up straighter. This wasn't scheduled until the afternoon. "As you know," Threen continued, "the coalition was founded on principles of peace and mutual cooperation. Our member species have built a society free from the violence and aggression that plagued our individual homeworlds in ancient times. We have achieved something remarkable, a true interstellar civilization based on understanding and respect." The holographic display shifted, showing images of coalition achievements: medical research, technological advancement, artistic collaboration, peaceful worlds where different species lived and worked together. "But now we face a test of our principles," Threen said, his sharp eyes fixed on the human delegation. "We are asked to accept into our midst a species of predators. Not reformed predators, not evolved predators, but active, practicing predators who maintain relationships with other predator species and see nothing wrong with this arrangement." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Sarah felt Marcus tense beside her. "They bring with them creatures designed for killing," Threen continued. "Creatures with claws and fangs, with instincts honed by millions of years of evolution to hunt and destroy. And they claim this is normal. They claim this is safe." That's when Artemis decided she'd been quiet long enough. The kitten had been dreaming, probably about chasing something, because when she woke energetically. Sarah felt the bag shift, heard the telltale sound of claws on fabric. Before she could react, Artemis had found the bag's opening and squeezed through. The kitten landed on the floor, stretched luxuriously, and looked around at her new environment with great interest. "Oh no," Marcus breathed. Artemis spotted it immediately. A holographic bird, part of a decorative display showing coalition wildlife, fluttered near one of the side walls. To the kitten, it might as well have been Christmas morning. She crouched low, her spotted tail twitching. "Artemis, no," Sarah whispered, reaching down. Too late. The kitten launched herself across the conference floor in pursuit of the holographic bird. Delegates screamed. Chairs toppled as species scrambled to escape. Security alarms blared. Ambassador Threen jumped backward with a shriek that seemed unlikely from such a dignified figure. Artemis, oblivious to the chaos, pounced at the hologram. Her paws passed through the light projection, which confused her greatly. She sat back, tilted her head, and tried again. Same result. The kitten made a small chirping sound of frustration. "Containment protocols," someone shouted. "Protect the ambassador. It's going to kill us all." Security forces converged from every direction. Sarah jumped to her feet, hands raised. "Wait, stop. She's just playing." But the security teams weren't listening. They formed a perimeter around Artemis, weapons drawn. The kitten, now thoroughly overwhelmed by all the attention, looked for somewhere safe to hide. She spotted a small maintenance drone hovering near the floor, collecting scattered data pads. Artemis bolted for the drone. More screams erupted. The drone's operator tried to pilot it away, but Artemis was faster. She cornered the drone against a wall, crouched low, and pounced. The entire assembly watched in horror as the predator landed on top of the drone. Any second now, the violence would begin. This was it. proof that predators could never be trusted. Artemis batted at the drone with her paw. Once, twice. The drone buzzed nervously. The kitten lost interest in attacking, and instead began rubbing her face against the drone's smooth surface. Then, apparently deciding this was a comfortable spot, Artemis curled up on top of the drone and closed her eyes. Within seconds, she was purring. The silence in the conference hall was absolute. Dr. Kolvar, a reptilian scholar from the ancient archive keepers, rose slowly from his seat. He approached the maintenance drone carefully, studying the sleeping kitten with intense fascination. His scaled hand reached out, stopped, then completed the gesture. He touched Artemis's fur gently. The kitten opened one eye, assessed that this new development was acceptable, and went back to sleep. Remarkable, Kolvar said softly. Ambassador Threen, you claimed this creature was designed for killing. Yet when presented with prey, it displayed play behavior. When confronted with a potential threat, it sought comfort rather than attacking. He looked up at Sarah. Dr. Chen, would you explain what I am observing? Sarah moved forward carefully, aware that every eye in the room was on her. She scooped up Artemis, who protested sleepily before settling into Sarah's arms. What you're seeing is domestication, Sarah said. Humans didn't just tame predators. We kept them in a state of permanent youth. Adult cats retained kitten behaviors, playing, seeking affection, treating humans as parent figures. We took their hunting instincts and channeled them into play. But why? Asked a gentlefolk delegate, his voice trembling. Why would you want to live with predators? Because they wanted to live with us, Sarah replied. Thousands of years ago, wildcats came to human settlements. They were attracted by the rodents that ate our stored grain. We could have driven them away, but instead we saw an opportunity. They controlled the pests. We gave them food and shelter. Over generations, we both changed. They became less aggressive, more social. We became more nurturing, more patient. She held up Artemis, who yawned widely, showing her tiny fangs. This is what cooperation looks like. Not the absence of danger, but the choice to redirect it. Artemis has all the tools of a killer, but she chooses to use them for play, for bonding, for communication. You speak of choice, Ambassador Threen said sharply. But can a simple animal truly choose? Can any of us truly choose? Dr. Kolvar interjected. Or do we simply follow our programming and call it choice? This creature shows more restraint than many sentient species I have studied. Marcus stepped forward, joining Sarah. Ambassador, I have a dog back on Earth. That's another predator species we domesticated. Descended from wolves, some of the most efficient pack hunters ever to evolve. My dog could easily harm a child, but she's worked as a therapy animal in children's hospitals for 5 years. She chose that. Every single day she chooses gentleness over violence. The conference hall buzzed with conversation. Some delegates were clearly moved. Others remained skeptical. Ambassador Threen's feathers ruffled in agitation. This proves nothing, Threen declared. A single incident with a juvenile creature hardly demonstrates that an entire species can be trusted. The humans may have fooled themselves into believing they have transcended their nature, but nature always wins in the end. Sarah met his gaze steadily, Artemis still cradled in her arms. You're right about one thing, Ambassador. Nature does always win, but you're wrong about what that means. Our nature isn't just what we're born with. It's what we choose to become. Ambassador Threen's private quarters were located in the highest section of Crystal Towers, far from the common areas where the other delegates mingled. He preferred it that way. The isolation gave him space to think, to plan, and to access information that most coalition members never saw. His taloned fingers moved across the control panel, unlocking security protocols that required special authorization. The ancient archive keepers maintained records going back thousands of years, documenting every first contact, every diplomatic negotiation, every attempt at interspecies cooperation. Most of it was routine. But buried in those records were the failures, the species that had been rejected, the civilizations that had been quarantined, the threats that had been eliminated. The holographic display materialized in front of him, showing a file marked with the highest security classification. The Kreshtar incident, 400 years old, but still relevant, still terrifying. Threen had been researching for days ever since the humans had submitted their membership application. Something about their casual relationship with predators had troubled him deeply, stirring memories of old stories his mentors had told him during his diplomatic training. stories about the species that almost destroyed the coalition. The Kreshtar had been impressive. Advanced technology, sophisticated culture, and a genuine desire to join the peaceful species of the galaxy. They had seemed perfect. Their representatives spoke eloquently about leaving behind their violent past. They demonstrated remarkable self-control. They passed every psychological evaluation. For 10 years they had been model citizens of the coalition. Then something changed. The reports were fragmentary, many details still classified even after 4 centuries. But the pattern was clear. Small incidents at first. Aggression during negotiations, territorial disputes, then larger problems, attacks on other species. Hunting behavior that escalated from disturbing to deadly. The coalition had tried everything. Mediation, psychological intervention, rehabilitation programs. Nothing worked. The Kreshtar claimed they couldn't help themselves. The predator instinct, dormant for years, had awakened, and once awakened, it couldn't be controlled. The final solution had been drastic. The Kreshtar were forcibly relocated to a quarantine world, forbidden from contact with other species. Some had resisted. Those conflicts had cost lives. Eventually, the Kreshtar had been isolated, their territory marked as off-limits, their name removed from official records. The coalition had learned a hard lesson. Predators could not be trusted, no matter how civilized they appeared. The instinct was always there, waiting, and now the humans wanted in. Threen saved the file to his personal storage and opened a secure communication channel. The face that appeared on his screen belonged to Enforcer Dax, a high-ranking member of the Coalition Security Guild. The Enforcer's crystalline features were difficult to read, but Threen sensed his interest. "Ambassador," Dax acknowledged. "Your message mentioned a security concern." "More than a concern, Enforcer. A potential catastrophe." Threen forwarded the Kreshtar files. "We are about to repeat history." While Threen plotted in his tower, Sarah was giving a presentation in Conference Hall 7. She had been invited by a coalition of delegates curious about Earth's unique relationship with other species. The audience was smaller than the main assembly but more receptive. These were the scientists, the philosophers, the truly curious minds of the coalition. Sarah had brought Artemis openly this time, and the kitten sat on the presentation table, occasionally batting at the holographic pointer Sarah used to highlight her slides. "This is my home," Sarah said, showing images of her apartment on Earth. 3 rooms, modest by human standards. "I live there alone, but I'm never lonely because I share the space with Artemis." The next image showed the apartment from a different angle. Scratching posts in the corners, cat toys scattered across the floor, a complex climbing structure that took up an entire wall, food and water bowls in the kitchen, a plush bed near the window where sunlight streamed in. "Notice anything?" Sarah asked. A gentle folk scientist in the front row raised his hand tentatively. "The space appears designed for the predator's comfort rather than your own." Sarah laughed. "Exactly. Marcus likes to joke that I don't own Artemis. She owns me. And he's not entirely wrong. I arrange my schedule around her feeding times. I buy furniture she won't destroy. I install barriers to keep her safe. In many ways, I serve her needs more than she serves mine." "Then why do it?" asked a Mer-Shanti delegate. "What benefit do you gain?" Sarah reached over and scratched behind Artemis's ears. The kitten pressed into her hand, purring loudly. "Companionship, comfort, joy. When I come home after a difficult day, Artemis is there. When I'm sick, she curls up next to me. When I'm lonely, she reminds me that I'm not alone. That connection is worth more than any practical benefit." She advanced to the next slide, showing dogs working alongside humans, search and rescue operations, guide dogs helping blind people navigate cities, therapy animals visiting hospitals and nursing homes, conservation programs where dogs helped protect endangered species from poachers. "We didn't just domesticate predators for our benefit," Sarah explained. "We formed partnerships. These dogs could easily harm the people they work with, but they choose not to. Every single day they choose cooperation over violence." Dr. Culvar, who had been taking extensive notes, spoke up. "Dr. Chen, you use the word choose frequently. Do you truly believe these creatures make conscious choices?" "I believe they make their version of choices," Sarah replied. "Are they as complex as our decisions?" "Probably not. But they evaluate situations, consider options, and act according to their individual personalities. Artemis isn't just following genetic programming. She has preferences, moods, opinions. She's an individual. The presentation continued for another hour. Sarah showed videos from Earth, answered questions, and watched as many of the delegates' fears transformed into fascination. By the end, several species representatives approached her with follow-up questions, genuinely interested in learning more about human-animal relationships. It felt like progress. That feeling lasted until she returned to her quarters and found them ransacked. Marcus arrived within minutes of her security alert. His expression was grim as he surveyed the damage. Furniture overturned, personal belongings scattered, files accessed. Most concerning, the security footage had been wiped. Professional job, Marcus said. Someone who knows coalition security systems. Sarah checked her research notes. They copied everything. All my files on domestication, Earth's animal species, our history with predators. Why would someone want that information? Before Sarah could answer, her communicator chimed. Commander Velsh's face appeared on the screen and the Krikstar looked deeply troubled. Dr. Chen, we have a situation. There's been an incident in the diplomatic quarter. An attack. Sarah's heart sank. What kind of attack? A creature matching the description of Earth predators was found near the quarters of Ambassador Threen. It killed a maintenance worker before security could stop it. That's impossible, Sarah said. Artemis is right here and there are no other Earth animals on the station. The security footage is quite clear, Dr. Chen. The Coalition Council has called an emergency session. Your presence is required immediately, and I'm afraid I must inform you that pending the investigation, you are under arrest for bringing dangerous creatures into Coalition space. The screen went dark. Sarah stood frozen, Artemis clutched in her arms. Marcus was already accessing his own databases, pulling up station security feeds. His face went pale as he watched the footage. Sarah, you need to see this. The video showed a creature attacking near Threen's quarters. It moved like a predator, struck like a predator, and yes, it resembled Earth's felines in general build. But something was wrong. The proportions were off, the movement too jerky, and the creature had 6 legs instead of 4. That's not from Earth, Sarah whispered. No, Marcus agreed. But by the time we prove that, you'll already be convicted in the court of public opinion. This was planned, Sarah. Someone wants humanity out of the coalition and they're willing to frame us for murder to do it. Security forces arrived at Sarah's door. She had just enough time to hand Artemis to Marcus before they placed restraints on her wrists. Take care of her, Sarah said. I'll prove you're innocent, Marcus promised. Both of you. As they led Sarah away, she caught a glimpse through a window of the upper towers. Somewhere up there, Ambassador Threen was watching. Somewhere up there, someone was pleased with how their plan was unfolding. And somewhere in the ancient archives, the truth about the Kreshtar waited to be discovered. The truth that would change everything the Coalition believed about predators, trust, and the nature of civilization itself. The detention facility on Station Alpha 7 was designed for temporary holding of diplomatic incidents, not serious criminals. Sarah sat in a small but comfortable cell, staring at the walls and replaying everything that had happened. Somewhere in the station, an innocent person was dead. Somewhere, a fake creature that looked enough like an Earth predator had been used to frame her species. And somewhere, Artemis was probably confused about why her human hadn't come home. 2 guards stood outside her cell. Both were young Krikstar, their mandibles clicking nervously whenever they looked at her. They probably believed she really was dangerous. Just another predator who couldn't control her instincts. One of them, a female named Zira, seemed less certain than her partner. Sarah had caught her staring several times, not with fear, but with something closer to curiosity. Can I ask you something? Zira finally said during a quiet moment when her partner had stepped away. Of course, Sarah replied. At the security gate, 3 days ago when you said the creature was only dangerous if you're certain things. What did you mean? The translator showed the words, but we didn't understand the context. Sarah smiled sadly. I meant Artemis is only dangerous to her natural prey. Mice, birds, insects. The things a cat would hunt in the wild. She has no interest in hunting people. We're too big, and more importantly, we're family. But the creature that attacked yesterday, Zira said. If it wasn't your Artemis, what was it? That's what we need to find out. Meanwhile, Captain Marcus Webb was doing exactly that. He had partnered with Commander Velsh, who despite his initial suspicions had been bothered by inconsistencies in the attack footage. Together they had been reviewing security recordings for hours. There, Marcus said, freezing the image. Look at the leg structure. Welsh enhanced the image. The creature in the video definitely had 6 legs. 2 in front, 4 in the back, arranged in a way that no Earth animal had ever been built. Could be a mutation, Welsh suggested, though he sounded doubtful. Or genetic engineering, Marcus countered. Someone created something that looked close enough to an Earth predator to be convincing, but they didn't know enough about Earth biology to get it exactly right. They pulled up files on Earth's feline species. Every single one had 4 legs. Marcus showed Welsh dozens of images and videos. Cats, lions, tigers, leopards, lynx, all 4-legged. Who would have access to genetic engineering facilities on the station? Marcus asked. Multiple species have the capability, Welsh admitted, but to do it secretly without leaving traces would require high-level authorization. Or someone with connections to high-level authorities. Welsh's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. You suspect Ambassador Threen. The attack happened right outside his quarters. Conveniently when he was elsewhere with witnesses. And he's been the loudest voice opposing human membership. Suspicion is not evidence, Captain. Then let's find evidence. They started digging deeper into station records, financial transactions, equipment requisitions, security access logs. It was Zira, Sarah's guard, who provided the breakthrough. During her lunch break, she contacted Welsh with information that made his antennae stand straight up. Commander, I've been thinking about the attack footage. I know where the blind spots are in our security system because I help maintain it. The creature appeared in a location that should have had 3 different camera angles, but 2 cameras malfunctioned that day. What are the odds? Show me. Zira pulled up the maintenance logs. Both cameras had been deactivated for routine maintenance by someone with administrative access. The authorization came from the office of the Security Guild. That's Enforcer Dax's office, Welsh said quietly. Marcus and Welsh looked at each other. This was bigger than just Ambassador Threen. While they investigated, Sarah continued her conversation with Zira. Other guards had gathered nearby, listening. Sarah found herself explaining the real meaning behind her words at the security gate. You see, Sarah said, when I said Artemis was only dangerous if you're certain things, I wasn't just talking about mice and birds. I was saying she's only dangerous if you're unable to look past your fear. If you're so focused on what she could do that you can't see what she actually does do. That's a nice philosophy, Zira's partner said skeptically. But philosophies don't protect you from claws and teeth, don't they? Sarah challenged. Your coalition is built on a philosophy. The idea that different species can cooperate despite their differences. You believe a Krixtar and a gentlefolk can work together, even though your species is so much stronger. Why? Because you both choose cooperation over conflict. That's different. We're sentient, so are humans, and we made the same choice. We chose to cooperate with our predators instead of fearing them. Was it risky? Absolutely. The first humans who let wolves near their camps could have been killed, but they saw the possibility of something better than fear. Partnership. An older guard, who had been listening silently, spoke up. I served in the Border Patrol for 20 years. I've seen what happens when predator species clash with peaceful ones. It never ends well. With respect, sir, you've seen what happens when predator species clash with each other, Sarah replied. Humans fought brutal wars for thousands of years. We were very good at killing each other. But we also learned to stop. We built societies based on law and cooperation. We learned that being able to kill doesn't mean you have to kill. Dr. Kolvar appeared at the detention facility, carrying several data pads and requesting access to speak with Sarah. The guards allowed it, and the reptilian scholar settled himself outside her cell. Dr. Chen, I have spent the last day researching Earth's history, he said without preamble. Your species is remarkable. And disturbing. And remarkable again. That's a fair assessment, Sarah agreed. You have domesticated more than 40 different species. Some predators, yes, but also prey animals. You keep them in your homes, work alongside them, even grieve when they die. This concept of pets and working animals has no parallel in coalition history. Because the coalition never needed it. Your species evolved past violence and came together peacefully. Humans had to learn cooperation the hard way. Kolvar tilted his head. Perhaps. Or perhaps we simply avoided the difficult questions. You said at the security gate that Artemis was only dangerous if you're certain things. I have been pondering that statement. What were the other things you meant to say? Sarah stood and walked to the front of her cell. Only if you're judging species by their teeth instead of their choices. Only if you're so afraid of what something could do that you ignore what it actually does. Only if you're unable to see that danger and trust can exist in the same creature. Profound, Kolvar said, and problematic for the Coalition's current philosophy. We have based our entire society on the premise that danger and trust cannot coexist, that we must eliminate all threats to achieve peace. But you can't eliminate danger, Sarah said. It's part of life. A Crickstar is dangerous to a gentlefolk simply by being stronger. A Mershanti could flood a space and drown air-breathing species. Even your crystalline species could shatter and create sharp edges that would harm others. Everyone is dangerous to someone. The question is whether you choose to use that danger or control it. Before Kolvar could respond, Marcus burst into the detention area with Commander Velsh close behind. Both looked grim but determined. We found it, Marcus said. The proof. He activated a holographic display showing financial records. Money transferred from Ambassador Threen's accounts to a genetics laboratory. Equipment orders for genetic sequencing and synthesis. Communications between Threen and Enforcer Dax discussing the Kreshtar incident and how history was about to repeat itself. They planned this, Velsh said, his voice tight with anger. They created the creature specifically to frame humanity. The worker who died was an accident. They only meant to scare people, to create evidence of human predators being dangerous. There's more, Marcus continued. He pulled up another file. We found the real Kreshtar records, the full unredacted version. The Kreshtar weren't violent predators who lost control. They were framed too. Sarah's eyes widened. What? 400 years ago, there was a faction within the Coalition that believed predator species should never be allowed to join, no matter how peaceful they appeared. They systematically sabotaged the Kreshtar integration, created incidents, manufactured evidence, eventually forced the Kreshtar to defend themselves, which was then used as proof of their inherent violence. That's genocide, Zira whispered. Political and social genocide. And they're trying to do it again, Velsh said. But this time we have proof. Just then, alarms blared throughout the detention facility. The guards' communicators all activated simultaneously with an emergency broadcast. All security personnel to Conference Hall 1. Priority alert. Ambassador Threen is demanding an immediate vote on the human question. Enforcer Dax has authorized the use of force if necessary. This is not a drill, Sarah looked at Marcus. They're making their move. And we need to stop them, he replied. But first we need to get you out of here. Velsh hesitated only a moment before deactivating the cell's security field. Dr. Chen, you're released into my custody pending resolution of these charges. Captain Webb, gather your evidence. We're going to that conference hall and we're going to show everyone the truth. As they rue Conference Hall 1 was chaos. Delegates shouted over each other in dozens of languages, the translators struggling to keep up with the overlapping voices. Security forces lined the walls, hands on weapons. Ambassador Threen stood at the central podium, his feathers ruffled in agitation, while Enforcer Dax loomed nearby like a crystal sentinel. Order, Threen demanded. We must have order. The evidence is clear. The humans brought predators into our midst and now someone is dead. We cannot delay this vote any longer. Evidence that has been falsified, came a voice from the entrance. Every head turned. Commander Velsh strode down the center aisle, flanked by Captain Marcus Webb and Dr. Sarah Chen. Behind them came Zira and 3 other security officers, their weapons drawn but pointed safely downward. The crowd parted like water. Commander Velsh, Enforcer Dax said coldly. The human should be in detention. The human should be exonerated, Velsh replied. He activated the hall's central holographic system, overriding Threen's presentation with his own. Because she's innocent and everyone in this chamber needs to see why. This is highly irregular, Threen protested. As irregular as manufacturing evidence? As irregular as genetic engineering a fake creature to frame an entire species? Velsh let that hang in the air for a moment. Yes, Ambassador. This is exactly that irregular. The holographic display showed the attack footage side by side with images of Earth's feline species. Marcus stepped forward to narrate. This is the creature that attacked near Ambassador Threen's quarters. Note the 6 legs. This is a cat from Earth. Note the 4 legs. No feline species on Earth has ever had 6 legs. This creature was created, not natural. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Threen's feathers flattened against his body. A mutation could explain. The mutation is explained by these records, Welsh interrupted, bringing up financial transactions. Payments from your personal accounts to a genetics laboratory, equipment requisitions, communications with Enforcer Dax discussing the need to prevent another Kreshtar incident. The Kreshtar were dangerous. Dax said, his crystalline voice sharp. They proved that predators cannot be trusted. Did they? Dr. Kolvar stood from his seat in the gallery. Or did they prove that when you frame someone for long enough, eventually they fight back? He activated his own data pad, sending files to the central display. These are the unredacted Kreshtar records. I gained access through my position with the archive keepers. They tell a very different story than the official version. The chamber fell silent as delegates read. Horror and shame crossed many faces. The Kreshtar hadn't been violent predators. They had been peaceful people systematically sabotaged by the same faction now trying to exclude humanity. 400 years ago, Kolvar continued, a group within the coalition decided that predator species were too dangerous to exist among us. They manufactured incidents, created false evidence, provoked the Kreshtar until they had no choice but to defend themselves. Then used that defense as proof of inherent violence. This is outrageous, Threen said, but his voice lacked conviction. Even if some mistakes were made centuries ago, that doesn't change what humans are. Predators who keep other predators as companions. It's unnatural. It's dangerous. Then I am dangerous too, said a small voice. A gentle folk delegate stood up in the back rows. Her fur was graying with age and her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. My name is Rilla. I serve on the Council of Historical Review, and I have a confession to make. She made her way to the front of the chamber. I have studied our species' history extensively. We gentlefolk present ourselves as purely peaceful, but that is a fiction we tell ourselves. 3,000 years ago, we were not so gentle. We competed violently for territory. We killed those who threatened our young. We had teeth we no longer have because we evolved past needing them. Other delegates began to shift uncomfortably. Rilla continued. Every species in this chamber has a predatory past. Some of us hunted for food. Others fought over resources or mates. We all came from violence. We all chose to evolve beyond it. The humans are simply more honest about where they came from. Sarah stepped forward and someone handed her Artemis. The kitten had been retrieved from Marcus's quarters, and she purred contentedly in Sarah's arms, oblivious to the momentous events unfolding around her. You asked at the security gate if she was dangerous, Sarah said, her voice carrying through the chamber's acoustics. And I told you only if you're certain things. I meant it as a joke then, but I understand now what I was really saying. She held Artemis up for everyone to see. The kitten yawned, showing her small fangs, then began grooming herself. Yes, she's dangerous. She has claws that can cut, teeth that can pierce, reflexes faster than most of your species. She was designed by evolution to be a perfect predator. But look at what she chooses to do with those gifts. Sarah set Artemis on the podium. The kitten immediately began exploring, sniffing at the holographic controls, batting playfully at floating data displays. She chooses to chase toys instead of prey. She chooses to sleep in sunbeams. She chooses to seek affection instead of causing harm. She has all the tools for violence, but she uses them for play and bonding. That's not weakness. That's civilization. Pretty words, Enforcer Dax said. But in a crisis, instinct takes over. The creature would revert to its nature. Would she? Sarah asked. She pulled out a small device and activated it. A high-pitched sound filled the chamber, one that triggered every prey instinct evolution had given to the herbivorous species. Several delegates jumped or cowered reflexively. Artemis looked up, ears swiveling toward the sound. She looked confused but didn't attack. Instead, she walked over to Sarah and rubbed against her leg, seeking comfort from the strange noise. Instinct tells her something is happening, Sarah explained, deactivating the device. But choice tells her to trust me, to seek safety with me rather than attack. That's what domestication means. Not the removal of instinct, but the channeling of it. Marcus stepped up beside Sarah. I want to tell you about my grandmother. She survived a war on Earth, one of the last major conflicts before we achieved global peace. She was held in a prison camp for 2 years. Do you know who saved her life? He pulled up images on the holographic display, an old photograph of a woman with a large dog beside her. This dog belonged to one of the camp guards. Every day this predator brought my grandmother food he'd stolen from the guard's supplies, kept her warm on cold nights. warned her when the guards were coming. That dog could have torn her apart, but he chose to protect her instead. When the camp was finally liberated, that dog had saved 8 prisoners' lives. The guard was executed for war crimes, Marcus continued quietly. The dog was adopted by my grandmother. He lived another 6 years in her home, surrounded by love. A predator who had every reason to be violent chose compassion instead. The chamber was utterly silent now. Delegates looked at each other, at the humans, at the small cat still grooming herself on the podium. Ambassador Threen seemed to diminish before their eyes. Even if all this is true, he said weakly, even if we were wrong about the Kreshtar, how can we be sure the humans won't eventually revert? How can we trust them? The same way you trust each other, Sarah said simply. The same way any civilization works. Through choice. Every day, every member of the coalition chooses to follow laws instead of their own desires. Chooses cooperation over conflict. Chooses understanding over fear. We're asking for the same chance the Kreshtar should have been given. The chance to prove ourselves through our choices, not be condemned for our biology. Dr. Kolvar moved to stand beside Sarah. I propose a new framework for coalition membership, one that judges species not on their evolutionary history, but on their demonstrated behavior. One that acknowledges all species carry the capacity for harm and evaluates how they choose to manage that capacity. The Kreshtar were wrong, he continued, not because they were violent, but because we never gave them a fair chance. We let fear guide our decisions instead of evidence. I move that we not only accept humanity's membership application, but also reach out to the Kreshtar with an official apology and invitation to return. Seconded, Rilla said immediately. Thirded, added a Mershanti delegate. Voices rose throughout the chamber, some in support, others in protest. But the tide had turned. Ambassador Threen looked around and saw his support crumbling. Even Enforcer Dax stepped away from him. Recognizing a losing position, Commander Velsh called for order. All those in favor of Dr. Kolvar's proposal? Hands, paws, tentacles, and various appendages rose throughout the chamber. Not all of them, but enough. More than enough. The motion passes, Velsh announced. Humanity is accepted into the coalition of peaceful species, pending standard integration protocols. And the coalition extends its formal apology to the Kreshtar people with an invitation to rejoin us. The chamber erupted in applause, though some delegates sat with arms crossed, clearly unhappy with the decision. Change was never universal, but it had begun. Sarasco,